Imagine for a moment being told that everything you thought you knew about desire, about relationships, about the dance between men and women, was only half the truth. Imagine being told that what you believed was a full picture was in fact just a shadow, a surface reflection, while beneath it all exists something older, deeper, far more potent than society has ever dared to speak of openly. What if there was a hidden layer of power, one buried beneath centuries of silence and social conditioning, so rarely glimpsed that most people will live and die without ever knowing it was there? And then imagine this. What if Socrates himself, the barefoot philosopher of Athens, the man who questioned kings and poets alike, was the one who held the key to this mystery? What if, long before modern psychology, long before Freud, Jung, and Beauvoir, Socrates had already seen what the world was too afraid to name: the true nature of feminine power? This is not an ordinary discussion. This is not a collection of dry facts or quotes from dusty books. No, what you're about to hear is something that can shake the very foundations of how you see women, how you see relationships, how you see yourself. It begins with one of the most dangerous questions ever asked, a question so subversive that even now most avoid it. What do women truly desire? And just as importantly, what role does power play in their silence? If you dare to walk with me through this exploration, I promise by the end you will see the world differently. You'll see yourself differently. You may even find it impossible to return to the comfortable ignorance that most cling to. Because once the veil is lifted, once the invisible is made visible, the game changes forever. So stay. Stay until the very end. Because the revelations that lie ahead are not the ones you think they are. Now, back to Socrates. Here was a man who never wrote a single book, and yet his legacy shaped the soul of Western philosophy. He lived without wealth, without comfort, walking barefoot through the streets of Athens. His weapon was not a sword, but a question. He would stop politicians, poets, generals, even strangers in the marketplace, and with relentless curiosity he would peel back the illusions they lived under. He was fearless in pursuit of essence. And yet, for all his courage, one subject hovered like forbidden fire. The subject of women, of desire, of the influence they wield. In public, women of Athens were expected to be silent, obedient, modest. But in private, in the home, in intimacy, in raising sons, in shaping warriors, they held a different kind of dominion. A dominion that required no title, no vote, no declaration. A dominion of soft power, of influence, of quiet authority that reached into the very bones of culture. Socrates knew this power. How could he not? His own wife, Xanthippe, was infamous for being sharp-tongued, assertive, unafraid to challenge him. History dismisses her as difficult. But pause for a moment. Why would a man like Socrates seek her truth above all else, bind himself to a woman like that unless he sensed there was a lesson even in her resistance, even in her fire? The truth is this. Socrates saw what most men refuse to acknowledge. Beneath the surface of society, women have always held a power that transcends the visible, emotional, psychological, subtle, a force that shapes the world without ever needing to announce itself. But here's the paradox. In public, silence. In private, sovereignty. In the marketplace, obedience. In the home, influence. And isn't it curious how that hasn't vanished even today? Ask yourself, is that power still alive now? Look carefully. Notice how decisions are steered, how relationships shift, how identities are shaped, often without a single word spoken. Centuries later, Carl Jung would echo the same truth through the idea of the anima, the unconscious feminine inside every man. He said it seduces, inspires, confuses, and completes him. But here's the danger. If a man does not know his anima, if he is blind to this inner feminine, it doesn't go away. It rules him from the shadows. So what happens when this invisible archetype collides with the real women in our lives? Are we relating to them as they are? Or are we caught in projections, puppets to strings we refuse to see? Most men never ask these questions. And that is exactly why they remain trapped in endless cycles of attraction, confusion, resentment, longing. The philosopher Alain once wrote that we don't fall in love with people who are right for us. We fall in love with people who feel familiar. Familiar because we are unconsciously searching for something we lost long ago or something we never had. And here lies the danger of Socrates. He did not simply examine appearances. He dug beneath. He questioned motives. He asked what lies behind desire itself. Applied to women, this becomes explosive because it forces us to confront not only what draws us to them, but what we are projecting onto them, what we are refusing to see in ourselves. Now imagine a society where men are trained to conquer, to provide, to pursue, but never to understand the depths of feminine psychology. In such a world, women become mysteries, symbols, desires, objects of fear, fantasies of salvation. And women, they learn generation after generation how to navigate this blindness, how to harness it, not out of cruelty, but out of survival. The wisdom is rarely written, but it is passed down nonetheless, in instincts, in whispers, in resilience. Simone de Beauvoir once said, "One is not born, but rather becomes a woman." That becoming takes place within structures that reward silence, that punish confrontation. Silence, however, does not mean absence. Silence can be a strategy, a survival tool, a form of power. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Many women would rather this dynamic never be spoken aloud, not because they are hiding something sinister, but because it works in their favor. Mystique works. Confusion works. The dance of pursuit works. If that veil is lifted, the dynamic shifts, and once power is named, it changes shape. Is that manipulation, or is it adaptation? Think of it as nature's mirror. Just as animals evolve camouflage to survive, humans evolve roles. Some of those roles are mythic, archetypal, older than history itself. And Socrates, perhaps more than any other man of his time, understood that myth was never just entertainment. Myth carried psychological truth. So let's be clear, this is not about accusing or blaming women. It is about awakening. It is about seeing what was always there but remained invisible. If we want deeper love, genuine intimacy, real understanding, we cannot afford to keep treating women as puzzles to solve or trophies to win. We must begin to see them as complex, multi-layered beings navigating a world that has rarely allowed them to speak fully. And to do that, we must begin with the hardest task of all, looking inward. Socrates said, "Know thyself." But what if knowing yourself also means realizing how much of your own desires, your own choices, your own frustrations have been shaped by feminine forces you never even recognized? What if so much of what you believe to be yours, your longing, your hunger, your insecurity, is in fact the quiet influence of the feminine, working beneath the surface, guiding you, sometimes ruling you without your awareness? And what if I told you that this is only the beginning? Because what makes this exploration so dangerous, so utterly transformative, is that we are not simply dealing with surface-level facts. We are touching suppressed truths, buried instincts, emotional undercurrents that almost never find words. And that is why so many men feel something is wrong in their relationships but cannot name it. They sense the imbalance. They feel the hidden currents. But because no one ever taught them to see the invisible structure of power, they misinterpret it. They grow frustrated, bitter, lost. This was the brilliance of Socrates. He refused convenient answers. He stripped illusion until only essence remained. If he were here now, he wouldn't ask a shallow question, "What do women want?" No, he would ask a deeper question, "What assumptions blind you from seeing them as they truly are?" And it is that question that shakes us to the core, because it forces us to admit that the scripts we've inherited about dating, about masculinity, about success, are not our own. They are cultural hand-me-downs, myths fed to us by media, by confused role models, by traditions that never sought to understand women, only control them. Scripts that glorify the man who wins attention, dominates, performs, and yet say almost nothing of the man who listens, who reflects, who dares to see beyond appearances. But what happens when you finally begin to see? You realize feminine power was never a trick. It is an energy, subtle, fluid, intuitive, whispering where the masculine shouts. And those whispers, they shape destinies. A look that collapses your confidence. A silence that says more than 1,000 words. Psychologist Eric Fromm, a student of Jung, described the feminine psyche as a great mother, not literal, but archetypal, a force that contains life, chaos, nourishment, and danger. To confront her is to confront existence itself, creation and death, love and abandonment, nourishment and terror. Most men are unprepared for such an encounter because we were raised to believe only in control, logic, directness. The feminine is not direct. It is layered, symbolic, emotional, not weakness, complexity. And it is in that complexity that the key lies. The key not only to understanding women, but to understanding ourselves. So what do women truly desire? Socrates would not have answered directly. He would have kept questioning until the question itself dissolved. And maybe that's the answer. Women don't need a man who knows all the answers. They need a man who sees, who listens, who feels, who is unafraid to enter the dance of mystery. But to see requires risk. The risk of letting go of certainty. The risk of facing your own wounds. The risk of questioning everything you thought attraction was built on. And once you step into that risk, nothing remains the same. To see requires risk. And most men are not ready for that risk. They cling to certainty, to roles, to illusions that keep them safe but small. Yet without that risk, without that willingness to step into the unknown, we never glimpse the true face of love or the true face of ourselves. Think of the countless times relationships falter not because of lack of attraction, not even because of betrayal, but because something unspoken, something invisible, quietly erodes a bond. A man feels a woman pull away. She grows distant. He grows frustrated. He demands an explanation. She gives none. But underneath the silence lies a question he has not asked himself. Was I truly present, or was I only performing presence? Because women feel the difference, especially those who have walked through emotional fire. They can sense when your words are hollow, when your attention is shallow, when your promises are mechanical. They may not explain it in detail, but they know. And when they withdraw, it is not manipulation, it is preservation. This is why Socrates' wisdom still cuts to the bone. He was never satisfied with appearances. He insisted on essence. And when applied to the feminine, that insistence reveals something shocking. The silence of women is not emptiness. It is a language of its own. A language men have never been taught to hear. In Plato's Symposium, Socrates recalls a conversation with a woman named Diotima. She was no ordinary woman, but a priestess, a philosopher, a teacher, and she spoke of love not as possession, not as conquest, but as becoming. She described it as a ladder, beginning with physical attraction, rising to the beauty of the soul, then the laws and knowledge, and finally, to the beauty of eternal itself. Pause and let that settle. What does this mean? It means that true love is not a static state, but a path, a progression, a transformation. It begins with desire for body, yes, but if it remains there, it withers. To grow, it must rise beyond the physical, into appreciation of character, of mind, of wisdom, until it touches eternal. And here's why so few ever find love in its highest form. Because climbing that ladder requires letting go of illusions. It requires abandoning the shallow games of validation, the desperate need to be admired, the fear of being vulnerable. It requires transformation, and transformation by its very nature does not serve the ego. It dissolves it. This, whether consciously or unconsciously, is what women often catalyze in men. Through their presence, through their contradictions, through their silence and their storm, they reflect back the very parts of us we hide. Our tenderness, our fears, our hunger for meaning, not because they wish to fix us, but because their very being awakens us to truths we resist. And when we resist them, when we resist the feminine, we are not merely resisting women. We are resisting our own evolution. Think back. Have you ever met someone who stirred something ancient in you? Someone whose presence evoked not just attraction but fear, admiration, even discomfort? That is not random. That is a soul encounter. These people appear not simply to comfort us, but to awaken us, to show us what we have avoided. And maybe this is why some women do not want men to awaken. Because once men truly see, once men begin to understand, they no longer chase illusions. They no longer fall prey to projections. They no longer treat women as saviors or demons, but as mirrors that reflect not who she is, but who he truly is beneath the armor. And this is why Socrates was so dangerous. Not because he had answers, but because he questioned the very ground you stood on. He made you confront the prison of your own mind. He forced you to look at the walls of illusion and ask, who built this, and why am I still inside? So I ask you now, what do you believe about women? What do you believe about love? About your own heart? And are those beliefs serving your growth, or are they keeping you small? The truth is never comfortable, but it is always liberating. And in stepping into that liberation, we reach deeper into the essence of feminine psychology. For centuries, it has been misunderstood, distorted, mocked, dismissed. Yet hidden within it lies the very key to a man's transformation. Because when a man finally sees the feminine not as a puzzle, not as a threat, not as an ideal, but as a force, an ancient, sacred force of evolution, everything changes. But beware, most people will never go this far. They will resist, they will deny, they will retreat. Because the truth we are approaching threatens the very structure of their lives. Why? Because once a man awakens to the feminine, the old games collapse. Manipulation loses power. Confusion fades. Illusions dissolve. And in their place stands something terrifying, clarity. Clarity sounds beautiful, but clarity is not comfort. Clarity means responsibility. It means you can no longer blame women for your wounds. You can no longer project your emptiness onto them. You can no longer claim ignorance. And once you can no longer hide, you must choose, evolve, or remain stuck in illusions you now know are false. There's a myth that captures this perfectly. The story of Psyche and Eros. Psyche, the goddess of the soul, is forbidden to look at her lover. Eros, the god of desire. She is told that love must remain blind. But one night, unable to bear the mystery, she lights a lamp and gazes at his sleeping face. In that moment, everything changes. Eros awakens, vanishes, and Psyche is cast into a painful journey of trials to regain what was lost. This is not just a tale of romance. It is a parable of awakening. The moment we dare to look at truth, the fantasy collapses. Comfort shatters. Illusions burn away. And in their place comes a difficult, painful path of transformation. For men, that moment often comes when they realize their relationships were never built on true presence. They were built on projections, on fantasies, on unconscious wounds. Jung described this through the anima. If the anima remains unconscious, a man will forever project her onto women. He will idealize, idolize, resent, and repeat. He will not love the woman before him. He will love the image he has placed upon her. But if he brings this anima into awareness, something radical happens. He becomes whole within himself. And only then, only from wholeness, can he love without need, without desperation, without illusion. This is what Socrates hinted at, what Plato echoed, what mystics across centuries have whispered. Love is not merely about union with another. Love, in its highest form, is a path to self-realization. But few walk this path. Most trade depth for safety. They cling to comfort, convenience, familiarity. But familiarity is not love. Familiarity is the echo of old wounds. How many times have you stayed not because it was right, but because it was familiar? How many times have you mistaken being wanted for being truly seen? How many times have you pursued someone, hoping they would heal your emptiness, only to find that emptiness growing stronger? This is not weakness. This is human. But it is also the invitation to awaken. Because when men truly awaken, they begin to see what was always hidden. The feminine is not a puzzle, not a riddle, not an obstacle. The feminine is a force, a field, an intelligence that speaks through intuition, through emotion, through presence. It cannot be controlled. It can only be respected. And here is a truth most deny. Many women, whether consciously or unconsciously, will test a man, not with words, but with energy, with chaos, with contradiction, with intensity, not to hurt him, but to reveal him, to see if he can hold himself steady, if he can remain present in the storm. Can he hold space when she unravels? Can he see through the layers, not to fix her, but to love her more deeply? This is not easy. It requires a different kind of strength. Not brute force, not dominance, but sovereignty, depth, a presence that cannot be faked. Because women, especially those rooted in their feminine essence, feel everything. They know when you are hiding. They know when your smile is a mask. They know when your words are empty. And they know when you are truly present. This is why the feminine can be terrifying to men, because she sees through you, not to shame you, but to call you into authenticity. In the ancient mystery schools, initiation was not about learning facts. It was about death and rebirth. The ego had to die so the soul could emerge. And often, this confrontation came through the feminine, not as a woman herself, but as what she represents. The unknown, the irrational, the chaotic, the transformative. Modern culture has forgotten this. It reduces women to roles, to labels, to stereotypes. It reduces men performers, chasing, proving, posturing. But beneath it all lies the truth. Love does not demand performance. Love demands presence. And presence is born not from chasing, but from stillness. Stillness to listen. Stillness to feel. Stillness to witness the feminine without fear, without fixing, without fleeing. Socrates knew this. That is why he taught through questions. Because answers cannot awaken you. Only your own confrontation with truth can. He wasn't trying to impress. He was trying to liberate. So I ask you, when challenged, do you shut down or lean in? When you feel inadequate, do you lash out, withdraw, or reflect? When love feels distant, do you chase harder or do you turn inward? Every moment is a test. Not from women, but from life itself. And if you pass, not through perfection, but through presence, you step into a realm few ever experience. A realm where love is not possession, but partnership. Where intimacy is not flesh, but soul. Where women are not puzzles, but oracles, guides into the deepest parts of yourself. And when you enter that realm, the game ends. The performance ends. The illusions collapse. And in their place begins a vision. One that redefines not only your relationships, but your very identity. And yet, even now, we are only preparing the ground. The ultimate truth, the truth that once seen cannot be unseen, lies just ahead. It is the truth that transforms not only how you see women, but how you see life itself. And that is where we must go next. And so we arrive at the edge, the place Socrates always led his students, the place where the ground beneath your feet begins to crack, and you must either leap into the unknown or retreat back to safety. This is not philosophy anymore. This is not theory. This is confrontation. The question we began with still lingers like a shadow. Why do some women not want men to awaken? Why do they prefer us to remain blind, clumsy, predictable? The answer is both simple and unbearable. Because once men awaken, the game is over. Think carefully. Entire industries, entire relationships, entire social structures are built on the unawakened man. The man who chases validation. The man who confuses lust for love. The man who seeks to be mothered rather than to stand sovereign. The man who fears silence, who runs from depth, who lives half asleep. Such men are predictable. They can be controlled. They can be used. They can be adored for what they provide, not for who they are. They can be manipulated through their hunger. But the awakened man, he cannot be controlled. He cannot be tricked by flattery, nor broken by rejection. He does not cling. He does not chase. He chooses. And this choice is terrifying. Not only to women who thrive on unconscious dynamics, but to society itself, because an awakened man is free, free from illusions, free from systems that depend on his blindness, free from relationships that demand his silence. This is why true awakening is so rare, not because it is hidden, but because it is costly. You will lose much of what you thought was love. You will lose many who claim to care for you. You will lose the comfort of illusions that once sheltered you. But in return, you will gain everything real. Look again at Socrates. He never wrote a word because he believed truth could not be captured, only experienced. And when he stood before the court of Athens, accused of corrupting the youth, he did not beg for mercy. He did not renounce his questioning. He accepted death, because he knew a life without truth is not worth living. That is the cost of awakening. Death, not always physical, but psychological. The death of who you thought you were. The death of who the world told you to be. The death of illusions that once defined you. But in that death, something is born. Something fierce. Something radiant. Something unshakable. This is why women test men. This is why love wounds us. This is why life itself confronts us with betrayal, with loss, with heartbreak. Not because the world is cruel, but because it is initiating us into something greater. And what is that greater truth? It is this. Love is not what you think it is. Love is not safety. Love is not possession. Love is not comfort. Love is fire. Love is storm. Love is death and rebirth. It strips you bare. It humiliates your ego. It exposes your lies. It burns away your illusions. And if you allow it, if you do not run, it transforms you into something you never imagined you could be. This is why Socrates spoke of Eros not as desire, but as a path to the eternal. Because love is not about her. Love is not about him. Love is not about romance. Love is the mirror that life uses to awaken you. And here lies the final paradox. When you stop needing women to complete you, when you stop projecting your wounds upon them, when you no longer chase or cling or demand, they finally feel safe to reveal themselves fully. Because only a man who does not need can truly love. Only a man who has faced himself can truly see. Only a man who has died to illusions can meet a woman not as a projection, but as a soul. This is the ultimate truth men fear. And it is the truth women, at times, unconsciously resist. Because once a man awakens, he is no longer theirs to control. He is free. And freedom is terrifying, but it is also magnetic. Because deep down, the feminine does not want control. She does not want a child she must carry. She does not want a boy she must mother. She wants a man who has faced death and returned alive. This is why, across history, women have been drawn to men of depth. Not wealth, not beauty, not charm. Depth, presence. The unshakable gravity of one who has faced the abyss and did not flinch. Socrates was ugly by all accounts. Poor, mocked, yet people followed him, loved him, feared him. Why? Because he had depth, because he could not be shaken, because he was awake. And so the challenge falls upon you. Will you remain as you are, blind, comfortable, predictable, or will you step into the fire? Will you allow love to strip you, to wound you, to dismantle every illusion you hold? Most will not. They will retreat. They will numb themselves with distraction, with shallow intimacy, with endless pursuits of status and validation. They will live half awake and die without ever having truly lived. But some, few, will say yes. Yes to the death of ego. Yes to the storm of truth. Yes to the terrifying clarity of awakening. And when they do, everything changes. Their relationships no longer follow the scripts of society. They no longer beg for attention, nor fear rejection. They stand rooted, sovereign, alive. And women feel it. The world feels it. Life itself responds to it. Because the awakened man is not simply a man. He is a force, a living embodiment of presence, a mirror of eternity in human form. This is what Socrates knew. This is what Diotima taught. This is what mystics across time have whispered, that the feminine is not your enemy. She is not your savior. She is your mirror, your initiator, your path to awakening. But only if you dare to look, only if you dare to die. So I leave you with the final question, the only question that matters. When love comes to burn you alive, when the feminine strips you bare, when life itself shatters every illusion, will you run or will you remain? Because in that choice, and in that choice alone, everything is decided.